Hi everyone, thanks for joining me here on JKD Handmade. So for this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to turn this little flower puff into a granny square. For the materials, you will need yarn. I'll be using leftover yarn. One is in a multicolor and the other is in a solid color. You'll need a 4mm crochet hook. You'll need a pair of scissors and a yarn or a wool needle to weave in all those ends. Now, if you've already watched my tutorial for this flower puff, you can go straight down to the comments and there you'll find timestamps where you can skip the tutorial, which is the first part of this video, and you can go straight through to the granny square. Believe it or not, this is my very first granny square. I have never made a granny square before, be it my own pattern or some other creator's pattern out there. I'm hooked. The thing that I love about granny squares is there's so many ways to make them. You can change them up. Unlike this granny square here where I used one color all around, I will be showing you how to go about changing your colors so that you may work them any which way you'd like to. So very quickly, if you are new to my channel and enjoy my tutorials, please do not forget to subscribe and also let me know from which part of the world you're watching from. So let's get started with this tutorial. Flower puffs. For the project, you will need yarn. I'm using leftover yarn, and this is 100% acrylic, double knit, light worsted, a category 3 yarn. You'll need a 4mm crochet hook, a pair of scissors, and to weave in all those ends, you'll need a yarn or a wool needle. So there are two ways to begin this project. I will show you both of them. The first is with a little chain. So you form a slip knot, insert your hook into that slip knot, then it's chain 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Into the first chain, slip stitch to join. So go into that first chain and slip stitch. Now we'll be working all our stitches into the center of this little ring. So for round 1, we'll chain 1. Chain 1 does not count as a stitch. And into that ring, we will work 12 half double crochets. So to work a half double crochet, it's yarn over, insert your hook into the center of that ring, pull up a loop with 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, and go through all 3 loops on the hook. So there you have a half double crochet, and you continue on working half double crochets into this ring. You'll work 12 of them. So once you have 12 stitches into the first stitch that we had worked, you can slip stitch by going into that stitch, pulling up a loop, taking that same loop and pulling it through the loop on your hook. So you've slip stitched to join that ring, and then you can pull tight on the tail end to close up on that little hole. So here you have round 1 all worked. Now for the second way. So if you don't prefer that method, you can use this, which is the magic ring. So here you will take your yarn end using your 3 fingers and form an X over your fingers, noting where the long end of the yarn is. So you'll go into that X, you will pick up on that long end of yarn and twist it around, and then it's just pick up on that same tail end pull through. So you've chained 1. And here you have a magic ring. So into this ring, you will work 12 half double crochets. And 12. Then you'll pull on that tail end to close up on this ring. Then you'll slip stitch into the first stitch. Now that we have round 1 done, we'll work our first petal. So it's chain 2 into that same stitch from where the chain 2 comes out of. We'll work a puff stitch. So it's yarn over, insert your hook into that stitch, pull up a loop and elongate the loop. And you'll do that 6 times in total. So that was the first time, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then it's yarn over and go through all the loops on the hook, chain 1 to secure. Then it's chain a further 2 and into that next stitch, slip stitch. Into the next stitch, slip stitch. Then now we're forming our next petal. So it's chain 2 into that same stitch from where the chain 2 comes out of, work a puff stitch. Chain 1 to secure that puff stitch, and then it's chain 2, 1, 2 into the next stitch, slip stitch into the next stitch. Then we can go on working our next petal. In total you will have 6 petals, so I need to work a further 4 petals. To end, I've chained 2 and I will slip stitch in between these 2 petals, the first and the last petal. Then I'll fasten off, cut off that excess. So this is the wrong side. I'll pull my tail end to the wrong side and I'll pull it tight to close on that tail end. And here you have your puff stitch flower. So these ends here, you need to weave them into your stitches on the wrong side. And there you have it. Okay, now for the granny square part of this tutorial. And here I've got my yarn. I'll be using the solid color. Now if you look at these flower puffs, you've got these little, along the petals, you've got these little stitches right at the center of that petal. So here's the petal, and right here, there's it here. If you look at the next one, here's it here. We'll be working our stitches into these stitches here, right at the center of that petal, all along the edges. So into that, insert your hook, and then with your yarn, you can bring your yarn through and pull it through. Then it's chain 2, 1, 2. Chain 2 does not count as a stitch. Into that same stitch here, we'll work 6 double crochets. So to work a double crochet, it's yarn over, insert your hook into that same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. That was my first double crochet. Then I'll work my second, the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. So it's 6 stitches into this little petal. Into that next stitch there, right there at the edge of the petal here, I'll work 6 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, into the next stitch right here on my petal, I'll work 6 double crochets, and I'll continue on working 6 double crochets into this top edge of the petals all along this first round. I've worked my way all around this flower puff with those 6 double crochets into each petal, and here I am at the end. Now I do want to go and change the color of my yarn, so I'll bring in the next color, and I'll sort of form a little loop like so. Into that first stitch, insert your hook, then pick up on this loop, the change of color, and that's the loop that you'll pull through. Pull through your stitch and pull through on that side as well. You can always tighten your stitch at the back. Then for round 2, it's chain 2. Again, chain 2 does not count as a stitch. Into that same stitch from where chain 2 comes out of, work a double crochet. You go about working 8 double crochets. So that was 1, and that counts as my first double crochet. Then here's my second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth. Into the next stitch, I'll work a V-stitch. So a V-stitch is a double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet all into the 1 stitch. Into the next 8 stitches, work 8 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Into the next stitch, work a V-stitch, which is a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, all into the 1 stitch. So into the next 8 stitches, work 8 double crochets. Into the next stitch, work a V-stitch. So that's a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, all into 1 stitch. Into the next 8 stitches, work 8 double crochets. 1, 2. Into the last stitch, work a V-stitch. So that's a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Then to join the round, before we join, I do want to go ahead and change the color of my yarn. So I'll go ahead and cut off on the first color that I had used. And I can go ahead and cut off here as well, leaving behind a long enough tail. So to change the color, I'll form a little loop like so on my color, on my change of color. And then into that first stitch, insert the hook. Go back to my change of color, bring in that change of color, bring it into that stitch and into the loop on the hook. And you've now joined, or you've changed your color. So for the third round, it's chain 1. Into the next 9 stitches, work single crochets, and our first single crochet will be worked into the same stitch from where that chain 1 comes out of. So to work a single crochet, insert your hook into the stitch, pull up a loop with 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and go through both loops. So that was our first single crochet. Then it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now at this point, I'm at that V-stitch. Into that chain 1 space, work 1 single crochet, chain 1 and single crochet. So you've worked a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet into that chain 1 space. So the second double crochet from our V-stitch is where we'll begin our next lot of single crochets. Into the next 10 stitches, work single crochets. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm at the chain 1 from the V-stitch. Into that chain 1, I'll work a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. So the second double crochet from our V-stitch is where we'll start our next lot of single crochets. Into the next 10 stitches, work single crochets. We're now at the chain 1 from the V-stitch. Into that chain 1 space, work a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. So the second stitch from our V-stitch is where we'll begin our next lot of stitches. Into the next 10 stitches, work single crochets. We at our last V-stitch. Into that chain 1 space, work a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, and into that second stitch from our last V-stitch we'll work our last single crochet. Then into the first stitch we can slip stitch to join. You can now fasten off by pulling on this end of yarn, cut off the excess, and that's your granny square. So all that needs to be done now is to weave in all these ends. You will do the same for all these ends, weaving them in. And that does it for this tutorial. You can go ahead and change your colors as you wish. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.